It all began on what seemed like an ordinary Friday evening when I invited my friend Emily over for dinner. The plan was simple: catch up on life, share a few laughs, and unwind. What I hadn't anticipated was how the night would take an unexpected turn, leaving me with memories I wouldn't soon forget. My stepson, Alex, had recently come back from college, and I thought it would be nice to include him in our evening. Alex had always been polite and well-mannered, but something about him felt different that night, though I couldn't quite put my finger on it. As I prepared dinner in the kitchen, Emily arrived, exuding her usual effortless elegance. She had a glow about her, and her laughter filled the space with warmth. I loved having her around. Her energy had a way of making everything feel lighter. Not long after, Alex entered the kitchen, offering to help with the food. I glanced at him and couldn't help but notice how much he had changed. Taller, more self-assured. For a moment, his eyes lingered on me in a way I wasn't used to, but I brushed it off, convincing myself I was imagining things. We eventually sat down at the dining table, the mood casual and easygoing. Wine flowed freely, and the conversation moved effortlessly from one topic to another. Emily, as always, was engaging, and Alex seemed completely captivated by her. Their playful banter and exchanged jokes made me smile. I assumed it was harmless, given the obvious age gap, but as the evening wore on, I noticed subtle shifts in Alex's behavior. His glances at Emily grew more intense, and I caught him watching her when he thought no one was paying attention. An unfamiliar tension began to creep into the room, though I couldn't quite identify its source. At one point, Emily placed her hand on Alex's arm in a playful gesture, laughing at something he said. A flicker of jealousy surged through me, surprising me with its intensity. I quickly dismissed the feeling, reminding myself it was nothing more than innocent fun. Yet Alex seemed to relish the attention a bit too much. Then, across the table, his eyes locked with mine, and something in his gaze sent a chill down my spine. Moments later, Alex reached out and gently brushed a strand of hair from my face. His touch lingered against my skin longer than it should have, catching me off guard. For a fleeting second, I saw a look in his eyes that I couldn't quite place, but it left me breathless. I'm unsure of how to react. I struggled to steady my racing thoughts. Emily, still engrossed in the conversation, didn't seem to notice the subtle exchange. I tried to regain my composure, but the weight of what had just happened hung in the air. Dinner continued, but the atmosphere felt charged, thick with an unspoken tension I couldn't shake. Alex's gaze found mine more often than I was comfortable with, and each look felt intense, almost searing. I began questioning myself. Was I reading too much into this? Could it all just be my imagination? Or was there something deeper unfolding beneath the surface of this seemingly ordinary dinner? Things took an unexpected turn as dinner wrapped up. As I stood to clear the table, Alex's hand brushed lightly against my lower back. The touch was subtle, but unmistakably deliberate. My body stiffened, and heat rose to my cheeks. Glancing at him, I saw a casual smile on his face, as though nothing had happened. But I knew what I felt, and it was impossible to ignore. Emily, unaware of the growing tension, suggested we move to the living room for dessert. I agreed, trying to calm my erratic thoughts. The questions raced through my mind. Was Alex flirting with me? Was he stepping over a line? Guilt swirled within me every time I looked at Emily. Yet I couldn't deny the electricity that seemed to fill the space whenever Alex was near. We settled onto the couch, with Alex seated on one side of me and Emily on the other. As the conversation continued, I became acutely aware of Alex's proximity. His leg brushed against mine, sending a jolt through me. Each time he moved, it felt deliberate, as though he were testing the boundaries. I tried to focus on the chatter, but my thoughts kept drifting back to the fleeting touches, the lingering stares, and the undeniable pull between us. Then, as Emily stood to grab more wine, Alex leaned in close. His breath was warm against my neck as he whispered, "You look beautiful tonight." The words struck me like lightning. In that instant, I knew this wasn't a misunderstanding or a coincidence. Alex was pushing boundaries I never thought would be crossed, testing me in ways I wasn't prepared for. My heart pounded as I realized we had stepped into territory I hadn't seen coming, and there was no denying the intensity of the moment. A storm of emotions swirled within me: confusion, excitement, guilt, but above all, an undeniable longing. When Emily returned, her presence broke the moment between Alex and me, but the tension lingered in the air. I couldn't bring myself to look at him without feeling like something forbidden and exhilarating was unfolding right in front of her. My heart raced as I tried to keep the conversation light, but the atmosphere buzzed with an intensity that small talk couldn't mask. As the evening progressed, Alex grew bolder. His hand would graze mine in passing, and his foot brushed against mine under the table. I was stunned by what was happening, yet I didn't stop it. There was something intoxicating about the forbidden nature of it all, something magnetic that drew me in despite knowing it was wrong. Emily, oblivious to the unspoken tension, eventually announced that it was time for her to leave. I walked her to the door, a strange mix of relief and anxiety churning inside me. Hugging her goodbye, guilt pricked at me for everything that had unfolded at the dinner table. But when I turned back to face Alex, his gaze locking onto mine with that same intensity, all thoughts of guilt melted away. With Emily gone, the house felt quieter, more intimate. Alone now, the tension that had simmered between Alex and me all evening reached its breaking point. He stepped closer, his eyes never leaving mine. The heat radiating from him heightened my awareness of every nerve in my body. I knew I should back away, create distance between us, but instead, I stood frozen, waiting for whatever was about to happen. What did happen next was something I never could have anticipated. Without saying a word, Alex closed the gap between us, his hand gently cradling my face as he leaned in and kissed me. The kiss began softly but quickly deepened as I found myself responding instinctively. Every rational thought finally finding its release. When we pulled apart, I was breathless, my heart pounding against my chest, Alex's eyes held a mix of desire and something more, something I couldn't quite define. Ah, I knew then that everything had changed. What started as an ordinary dinner had evolved into something infinitely more complicated, something I wasn't sure I could navigate. But even as I tried to make sense of what had just happened, I couldn't ignore the thrill coursing through me. The danger, the excitement, the sheer intensity of it all left me shaken and exhilarated. I didn't know where this would lead, but one thing was clear. This was only the beginning. As the night stretched on, I found myself caught in the moment, struggling to reconcile what had happened with what I knew to be right. Alex stood nearby, his gaze unwavering, filled with a hunger that sent shivers through me. I wanted to speak, to break the heavy silence that had settled between us, but words refused to come. My thoughts raced, tangled with doubts, questions, and emotions I wasn't ready to confront. Then Alex stepped closer, his hand brushing against mine and sending a spark of electricity through me. I had never looked at Alex this way before. He had always been my stepson, part of my family, someone I cared for deeply, but never in this way. Yet, tonight, everything had shifted. The boundaries that once seemed so firm were now blurred, and I felt powerless to stop it. I've always felt something for you, Alex finally admitted, his voice slow and weighted with emotion. But tonight, I couldn't hold back anymore. His words hit me like a tidal wave. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, a mix of shock, disbelief, and, dare I admit, excitement rippled through me. No one had ever looked at me the way Alex did now, with such intensity, such raw yearning. It was overwhelming, and part of me wanted to surrender, to explore this dangerous, uncharted path. But another part of me screamed that this was wrong, that I needed to put an end to it before it went any further. Alex, we can't, I whispered, though even as the words left my lips, they felt uncertain. My resolve was crumbling, and I could feel myself being drawn deeper into the moment. But why not? Alex pressed, his voice soft, yet unyielding. I know you feel it too, Alex said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. I see it in the way you look at me, the way you reacted tonight. This isn't one-sided. His words struck a chord deep within me, reflecting the emotions I had tried so hard to ignore. I couldn't argue because I knew, deep down, he was right. I did feel it. Something intense and undeniable, as much as I wanted to push it away, to pretend nothing had changed. I knew there was no going back. Before I could respond, Alex stepped closer, his hand gliding gently up my arm, leaving a trail of warmth in its wake. His touch was light and cautious, as though waiting for my approval to continue. In that moment, I realized I wasn't resisting anymore. I had already crossed a line, and there was no undoing it. I don't know what's happening between us, I admitted softly, my voice barely audible. But this, it isn't supposed to happen. Maybe it's not, Alex replied, his gaze fixed on mine. But that doesn't mean it's wrong. Sometimes the things we want most are the ones we're too afraid to admit. His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. He was right again. I had spent the evening denying my feelings, shoving them aside because they didn't fit the picture-perfect life I had carefully constructed. But now, standing here with Alex, in this quiet, intimate moment, I couldn't hide from them anymore. Without thinking, I reached out, my fingers brushing against his jawline. He leaned into my touch, his eyes fluttering closed for a second before opening again, filled with the same intensity as before. Before I could stop myself, I leaned in, closing the distance between us. Our lips met in a kiss that felt both inevitable and forbidden. This time, the kiss was different. There was no hesitation, no second guessing. It was fueled by the desire, tension, and yearning that had been building all evening. Alex's arms wrapped around me, pulling me closer, and the heat of his body pressed against mine. As I surrendered to the overwhelming sensation, we stumbled backward toward the couch, our lips never parting, our hands exploring each other with a desperate urgency that felt primal. When we finally collapsed onto the cushions, adrenaline surged through me. I had never felt anything like this before, this mix of exhilaration and fear. Alex's hands roamed over me, sending my heart racing and my breath quickening. That would be ratcheted into dangerous territory. That we were doing could have serious effects on us. But in that moment, none of it mattered. All I cared about was him, his touch, his kiss, the way he made me feel. For the next hour, the world outside disappeared. It was just the two of us, entwined in a web of passion and desire that I couldn't escape even if I wanted to. Every kiss, every caress pulled me deeper into the unknown, and I willingly surrendered to it. But eventually, reality came crashing back. As we lay on the couch, our breathing uneven and our bodies tangled together, the weight of what we had done settled over me. A pang of guilt pierced through me as I thought about Emily, about my husband, about everything that had just happened. What had we done? How could we ever go back to the way things were? I pulled away from Alex, my mind racing. He looked at me, concern flickering in his eyes. "Are you okay?" he asked gently, his hand brushing my arm. I nodded, though I wasn't sure if I was being honest. I didn't know how to process any of this, didn't know what was supposed to happen next. I need to think, I murmured, standing and smoothing my clothes. This is a lot. Alex nodded, his expression understanding, though I could see the hurt in his eyes. He didn't want to stop any more than I did. "I'll give you space," he said quietly, rising to his feet. "But please, don't regret this." His words hit me hard, and I looked at him, my heart heavy. I didn't know if I regretted it, but I knew everything had changed in ways I couldn't have anticipated. As Alex left the room, I sank back onto the couch, my thoughts a whirlwind of emotions. I knew nothing between us would ever be the same, and I had no idea how to untangle the complicated mess we had just created. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more suspenseful and exciting tales like this, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. There's so much more to come, and I promise you won't want to miss a single moment.